going to get started. I've got Santa's little helper in the background who's going to help me with the technicals as people continue to join us. So first and foremost, thank you for joining me. I have to thank you. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate the fact that you're taking out time on your Wednesday to spend time going through planning what 2026 could look like and learning about the systems that I've used to be really intentional around both how I set up my goals, but also the systems that I use to break them down into smaller digestible chunks and to make them a lot more achievable and a lot more fun too. Okay, so I'm going to go through that today, and hopefully you get some nuggets from that and can decide how you tailor that for yourself as you go on your journey. Okay, my style when I'm doing these type of webinars is that even if you're on mute, if you're feeling it, if it's something that really resonates, feel free to go off in the chat. I'm going to see it at some point, and it gives me energy when you're going off in the chat. Even sometimes when you're just giving the emojis, like you put fire in the chat, I know what's going on. I know something resonated. So feel free to just have the freedom in the chat, okay? You don't need to be on your best behavior in here. I want you to be yourself, okay? So what we're going to cover today, okay? We're going to start with systems instead of the goal. All right. Typically with these sessions, people are really focused on talking about goal setting frameworks. We're not going to start there, and that's very intentional by design. Okay. Then we're going to walk through my system and the system that I use personally, and I've used for about a decade now. Then we're going to talk through setting up your 2026 intentions and what that system could look like for you. And before we close, I'm going to give you some links to my system so that you can copy and paste the templates for yourself. Those links to my systems are going to be in Notion and Google Sheets. So I'm trying to make it accessible for those that are not necessarily Notion advocates like myself, okay? So I'm going to share that at the end of the webinar. Then we're going to just do reflections and close out, okay? All right, so this is an opportunity for you to give reaction to show me you understand what I've shared and it's all good and you're looking forward to our time together. Excellent, excellent. All right, and I'm seeing some people still sharing in the chat. Fantastic, good introductions. All right, so let's start with the goal, the system, and not the goal. What do I mean by that? Why am I saying that? James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, famously said, "You don't rise to the level of your goals, but rather you fall to the level of your systems." I'm actually a firm believer in this quote. I see it to be true day in and day out in my business ventures, but also in my personal life. So actually, when we talk about setting up systems, what I really mean in practice is consistency. How do we create a consistent way for us to continually track how we're getting on with our goals and what we want to achieve? How do we create a repeatable system to chip away at small milestones that have a compound impact and add up to big goals? So that's what I'm going to walk through. I'm going to walk through what that really means for me. So to start this story, I need to go back to 2020. During 2020, I asked a few friends, some family members, and some ex-colleagues this really simple but powerful question. I asked them, what comes easy for me but difficult for others? What comes easy for me but difficult for others? And I can see some of you writing that down. Great. Take a screenshot, write it down. Good. Capture it. Okay. You can DM me after. I'm happy to share a link to the slides. Okay. But this question, what comes easy to me but difficult to others? And the reason I asked them that question is because I was really trying to understand my strengths. I was really trying to understand my unique abilities. And I wanted to get feedback from others to really understand how I come across. And I was a bit frustrated at first when I started getting the replies, because what I was expecting to receive, I thought would tightly fit into a category or box that I could put into a job role or job title. But what I received was actually quite different. What I received was that, Andy, you're great at connecting with people and connecting people. You're really good at public speaking. You're a system thinker. You connect the dots and you think through systems. And at the time, I got frustrated because I found that really unhelpful because I didn't know how to translate that into my daily experience. I thought it was really soft and really intangible and therefore hard to grasp. And I share that because I think a lot of the times, a lot of us have skills that we undervalue, abilities that we don't even notice, strengths that we really don't know how to translate because we're thinking about how we monetize it in a job experience, when that isn't always the case. And that was me back in 2020, after I asked that question and probably looking for confirmation bias, I didn't receive the responses that I thought I would. And that set me off actually on looking back further at my journaling journey. And my first time journaling was in 2011. And in that year, I finished university. I had a gap year because I got a deferred entry into my first professional role at Ernst& Young. And I really wanted to do one thing and one thing only. Do you know what that was? What do you think I did in 2011?
Travel.
Oh, Vivek knows me well. I went backpacking. I went backpacking. And it was a life-changing experience for many reasons. Okay. But one of the reasons was because I started to keep a physical journal, right? And I found that journal in my loft a few months ago. And I went back and reread what I wrote back then. And I found it both interesting and inspiring in equal measure to think how I was thinking as I was going through that experience. And I can definitely see when I connect the dots, the type of things I was writing during that experience and the type of work that I do today. And what I mean by that is I was writing things in that physical journal like I really love cultures and teams and people and communities. And I love immersing myself in new cultures. I love creating safe spaces where people feel comfortable in sharing more of who they are with me. And sometimes I have to lead and be vulnerable and go first in sharing a bit more about myself. And that's the kind of thing I was writing back in 2011 when I was in Peru on the Inca Trail, visiting Machu Picchu. So my first journal was really physical. The problem with that journal was that I hardly went back to look at it again and again. It was only 4 months ago that I picked it up. Before then, I hadn't looked at it for at least a decade. So in 2019, I said something has to change. So instead, I went to a digital journal, and this time I went into Google Docs. And I'm going to share this in a second and literally share my screen and show you my Google Docs. But with this Google Docs, I wrote about 17,000 words in total in my journal. And it was all these random entries from listening to a podcast to watching a video to things that I was experiencing in my daily life, to my relationships, to my kids. I was writing all sorts in there. The trouble I found was that when I was trying to look for things in there, I'd have to be clicking Control F. Does anyone know what Control F is? Or Command F? It's a shortcut for find. Basically, you're saying that this is a lost and found box, and I'm trying to find something in here. So I was literally always trying to find certain things that I was looking for in my journal because it was really difficult to navigate and connect the dots within my past experiences. So today I've changed my journaling system, and that's why I use Notion for my system. But I actually want to actually show you what that means in practice so you can get a clearer picture of what I'm talking about when I talk about this digital journal. So at first, I want to share my Google Docs, okay? And I want to show you what journaling meant to me in 2019. All right. So this was I call my journal my tracker. All right. So it's called my tracker, and this is how I track my curiosity, if you like. So you can see in 2019, I'm literally putting entries, the date, what is about. This was about the late Ken Robinson, the great educator and teacher and speaker. And I remember watching his TED video when I'm looking back at these notes, and I was talking about his story arc and the art of the talk and the things that I took away from the talk. That was one of my first entries there on the 3rd of January in 2019. Okay. As I scroll through, you can see entry after entry in my journal, date, what it's about, and a little description. And it's about all sorts of things. Right here, I proposed to my wife in Dominican Republic. Fortunately, she said yes. Right? These are the kind of things I was writing back then. Right? I was nominated, not a lot of people know this actually, for a program with President Obama, and I met him in Berlin. And it was an incredible experience. I actually declined it because I had a really young daughter and I wanted to be a present father, and it would compromise my ability to do that. So I ended up saying no to that opportunity. But it's in my journal. So as you can see, it's quite rich, but it's just really hard to sort through and connect with. And that was the problem. So I said to myself, I love that I'm journaling. I love what I'm capturing here, but I need a way of really kind of going back through my journal and connecting the dots. And that's what took me to Notion. That's when I said to myself, I need to upgrade my system. Before I show you my Notion, I just want to understand, and feel free to unmute yourself. Who has a journaling system today? And I know some of those systems might be physical because I too miss writing in a physical book. So I know the feeling of that. Who has a journal in general? Anthony, I saw your hand up.
I
You got
do.
you journal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a physical journal that I've had over the last probably decade,
Wow.
on and off. But when they get to be too many, I've scanned or taken pictures of the old ones.
Wow.
Um, but I'm starting to keep a physical personal and a physical kind of business journal.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. Who else said that they have a journal?
I have one. So I have one of
Alison, how do
those,
you journal?
yeah. Have you guys heard those like one line a day journals?
Yeah.
So it's like really cool because on the same page it has space for 5 different years. So I got it I think 2 years ago, so I can like see what I wrote on January 3rd from the last 3 years. So sometimes I just do like whatever is on my mind that day, but then sometimes I find like prompts online and do like a month focused on like introspection and then have like a whole month of prompts related to a certain theme.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's really cool. How long have you been doing that for?
2 years now. So
Oh,
it's
that's
really cool
awesome.
now that I'm finishing the second year, and I can't wait to start the third year to have like 2 previous years of information in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like
That's when it
for
starts
tracking
getting
like
powerful.
progression. Yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get insights, don't you? You get insights when you look back and connect the dots. That's the power of
Yeah.
that introspection,
Like the things
isn't
that
it?
were important to me back then, like aren't that important to me now, but it's really rewarding to see like I loved my partner equally 3 years ago than I did today. So
I
that there's
love
like some
that.
really good things in there too.
I love that. Just out of curiosity, because I can see even in the comments, what is the trigger that gets you to journal? What is that auto trigger that gets you to be like, oh, I want to document this on my phone or on notes or in a journal and a diary? What is that for you? Right. For Anthony, for you, it's a ritual. It's something you're used to now. You're just in the habit of doing it so often, you just naturally do it. Right. So for Sarah, it's like emptying your brain. Yeah, I feel like it's DIY therapy myself. Right. Getting it out and putting it somewhere. Okay. Yeah, pour it out. I totally get it. Too many thoughts in your head. I can relate to that as well. Right. But it's different triggers for different people as to what causes you to journal, isn't it? So now I'm going to show my Notion system. And I don't want to scare anyone, okay, because it is a little bit geeky. I call it like the Google Analytics of myself. All right. And I call it that because it allows me to really track actually what I've been experiencing and to categorize that so that I can go back and look at it in a more analytical way. All right. Are you ready to see my Notion journal? Excellent. All right. So on my screen here, you can see my Notion journal. I call it my Tracker 2025. And there's certain categories that I categorize all of my entries into. So I've got health and fitness, work and business, friends and community, personal life and family, marriage, learning and knowledge, ideas, which I'm probably going to delete, emotions and spirituality, and higher self. I just want to give a highlight to higher self. Higher self was a category that I created in the last 12 months. And it's me being in dialogue with my future self. And the reason that is such an important category for me is because, an oak tree in a seed is still an oak tree, right? So the same way that who I am today is also the same person as who I'm becoming. So it's really important for me to feel proud about myself, to have self-belief, and have that dialogue with myself on who I am today, but also who I'm becoming. So that category has been a really powerful reminder to me around being in dialogue with myself and being my own champion and first cheerleader. So that's why that category exists. The second thing I'll say about these categories are that you've got to personalize it for you. Over the years, these categories have evolved and changed for me. Okay. So these categories will look maybe slightly different for you. We might have some commonality like health and fitness, for example, but maybe friends and community, maybe marriage, maybe ideas, maybe emotions and spirituality. Maybe that's different for you. Right. But you've got to personalize it to make your own, to make you feel like you actually want to adhere to even coming into this process. Okay. So here you can see the type of entries that I put into my journal. Okay. So for example, I'm not sure if I'm going to be connected here to the internet, but I did some group coaching last week with some Black founders. So here I'll categorize this as work and business. The subcategories that is a testimonial are sadly the Wi-Fi is playing up, but in here is a screenshot actually of an email that I received of feedback from the session and how the founders found it. Right. So in here, for example, I received a lovely card from a friend of mine, and I love when people give me physical cards. So I categorize that as friends and community. I put it as a win and a testimonial because he said some lovely words in the card where I took a picture. It's not showing up, sadly, because of the Wi-Fi. But what you're seeing here is actually these are the type of entries that I'm putting into my journal. Okay. Here's, for example, some feedback that I received from a newsletter, right? So, and here's me writing a response to that person about that feedback. But here I categorize it as friends and community, and I categorize it as a testimonial. Why this is powerful is because when it gets to that time of year when I want to do mid-year reviews or end-of-year reviews, now I've got this rich history of entries that I go through. See, 71 for health and fitness, 150 for business, right? Like friends and community, 72. This rich history of entries that I go through, and I really answer 3 questions. What's worked well? What didn't go so well? And what will I focus on next year? 3 questions, okay? So when I look at health and fitness, I did things like Tough Mudder. I'm really proud about that. I went for runs with my daughter who's 8 years old. I'm really proud about that. I've signed up for David Lloyd's, really proud about that. I'm not as proud of the fact that I broke my Fitbit when I went to Dubai and got a bit too trigger happy and jumped in the water when it's not water resistant, right? So there's little things like that that I'm capturing in my journal. And what it allows me to do when I capture these things over time is it allows me to start connecting the dots. It allows me to understand the interconnected experiences I've had and what it means for me as an individual. It allows me to really analyze what brings me energy and what drains my energy, right? It's little things like facilitating at a conference and what did that mean to me and how did I feel about that and what did I capture about that, right? The pictures are not showing, but I capture a lot of pictures and screenshots of what people send me on LinkedIn or on WhatsApp or on email so that I capture the natural language that people shared with me initially. And that's an important part for me because I don't want to paraphrase the language that people often use when they're describing and sharing things with me, right? So that's a little insight into my actual journal. And you can see here, this is me that I've done my end of year review this year, but there's so much in here. Like I go to testimonials and I look at the kind of things that I've captured there. So much responses to my newsletter. And I've loved that and I've received that and I've appreciated that. And it's actually encouraged me to keep on writing my newsletter, right? There's another one here. I did a number of pieces of work with a specific client, and I wanted to capture that feedback here to remind myself that I'm actually doing work that's really mission aligned and aligned to my strengths, what I believe I should be doing, right? So when I connect the dots, it leads to insight on what gives me energy and what drains me my energy. It allows me to start focusing a lot more intentionally around what area do I want to play and what do I intentionally want to say no to. And it leads to some big decisions. One of the big decisions for me this year, in July, I said to myself, I'm going to do a reset. And I shared it publicly on LinkedIn. And one of the big insights from that reset is I used to feel guilty in saying no to others. So when people wanted to pick my brains, when people wanted a meeting with me, I used to feel really bad at just saying no. Who can relate to that? Who's had that experience before, right? And I felt guilty because by default, I'm a helper. I love being useful and helping people, right? But a problem with that is that it turns into a draining experience when you're giving, but you're pouring from an empty cup. You're not taking the space and time to fill that cup. And what I noticed about myself, similar to many other knowledge workers, is a lot of our IP and intellectual property is in our head. So it's really hard, unless you're intentional, to switch on and switch off from work. Because while you're running or while you're in the gym or while you're swimming or while you're in the shower, you can have ideas. While you're listening to a podcast, while you're in a commute, you could be thinking about work. While you're at the dinner table, while the kids are around, it's really intense. It takes intention to switch on and off from work because all of the work is in our minds. So this year I was really intentional around saying no a lot more to people. And those small no's were a big yes to myself. Because what I realized is that when you're back to back in meetings, what diminishes is the quality of your decision making as a consequence. Whereas when I have space in my calendar, it allows me to have space to think, to reflect, to create, to plan. And therefore, it allows me to make smart decisions on a more consistent basis. And it improves the quality of my performance and my output because I've just had space to think. How many people can relate to that? That just the value of having space. But when you're in a 9 to 5, when you're employed, when you're working at a company, it's really difficult because annoyingly, what happens is that people assume that because you've got space in your calendar, what does it mean? It must mean you're free. It must mean you're available to meet. The default thinking isn't that you're working during that time. So what happens is you look at your calendar and you're exhausted before you even start the day because you see that you're back to back in meetings and you're constantly context switching and you're probably making worse decisions as a result of that because you don't have the space to reflect and think. And sadly, when we look at the cost of such days, work ends up getting done in the evenings. And then we're eating into our personal space. Then we're eating into our self-care. Then we're eating into our time with loved ones. Then we're eroding our ability to honor our health and fitness routine, for example, or to eat well or to go to the gym. So we end up paying the cost of that. So that was one of my big insights for myself this year, but actually a universal truth that I realized that a lot of people suffer with as well. But that insight came actually from me actually journaling. And Sarah kindly actually shared this book with me earlier on this year, Essentialism. And it's a great book and a reminder of less but better, right? Focusing on less, but focusing on doing the less things that you're doing a lot better, right? It's the reason why I do things like webinars rather than having 30 one-to-one coffee catch-ups to go through the same teaching, right? It's me trying to scale myself and to be helpful and to be useful, which matters to me, but also to still protect and honor my time and to put myself first, right? And I know we can sometimes feel guilty with that, but it's really important, isn't it? Putting ourselves first, all right? And don't worry, there is going to be an opportunity for conversation and questions, okay? I'm intentionally getting through the material so that we can get to a space where we can have more conversations. So I've shared insight into my system, and now I want to talk about, like, what does it look like to set up your system? That first question that I shared with you earlier, what comes easy to me but difficult to others, I actually want to encourage you to ask that question to your friends, families, and ex-colleagues. I think you'll find it very insightful what they share, which may even surprise you in terms of how you see yourself and how you're perceived by others. Okay, so between now and the end of January, if there's any piece of homework that I would give, is to encourage you to ask this simple question, even by WhatsApp, to the group of people, your family, friends, and ex-colleagues. Even better, if you have a really close friend, ask them if they could do that on your behalf. You know, I have my podcast host, Hattie, who asked one of her friends to do that exercise for her. And she went the extra mile and went into Gamma and created a beautiful presentation to play back the results. I was kind of envious. I thought that was a brilliant idea, you know, but you can make it a little bit fun, but it's a very insightful, simple exercise. So before we look forward at planning 2026, I'm intentionally looking back at how we set our systems up so that we go into 2026 with the systems and not just the goals that end up fading away without the systems, okay? So the first thing that I want you to do after you've asked that question is to do something that I call a T audit. Has anyone come across this before? It stands for time, energy, and attention, okay? And I want you to just even look at the last couple of weeks in your calendar if you don't keep a journal currently. If you do keep a journal, look back into your journal, into the last 2 months of entries. And I want you to document and capture, when you look at your time that you spent, what is giving you energy and what is draining your energy? What are you great at? What are you not so good at? What do you enjoy doing? What don't you enjoy doing as much? And I want you to audit that for yourself, to take stock and create a baseline of where you are today. Okay, I'll repeat that again. A T audit is looking at time, energy, and attention, because where your attention goes, your energy flows. All right. So we want to understand, what am I great at? What am I not so good at? We want to understand, what do I enjoy doing? What don't I enjoy doing so much? And we want to understand what gives me energy and what drains my energy. And this is just to establish a baseline as an individual as to where you are today. Now, for everyone that's on the entrepreneurial train, I know there's quite a few of you here who are freelancers, entrepreneurs. I've seen it even in some of your introductions. I want to introduce you to another technique that you can do on your business called red, blue, black. Very simple, red, blue, black, color coding system, okay? Red stands for the activities that you do that are related to like productivity and infrastructure. There's support activities. There are things like calendar scheduling, going back to arrange a meeting, things like email management, things like sorting out contracts and invoicing with a client. They're things that need to be done, but they're actually support tasks for your business. So I want you to color code your calendar over the last month. What are the red activities and how much time do I allocate to red activities? The second are what we call blue activities. They represent sales today, money that we're making today. That's your revenue generating activities. That's like what I did today at my client. I came to deliver a workshop and a masterclass. That is a blue activity. Okay, so blue represents revenue generating today. So go again and map that in your calendar. And then finally, we have black. And black represents all of the things that are future money into the business. Another way of thinking about that is strategy, right? Business development, things that I'm doing today in order to make money in the future, to make money tomorrow. Okay. Now, when I'm coaching entrepreneurs, what I typically find is that we spend maybe 50% of our time in red, 40 to 50%. Then we spend the other 40 to 50% actually in blue because we're constantly delivering. And when we're not delivering, we're constantly doing the admin behind that delivery. And we spend hardly any time in black. And if we don't slow down and consciously prioritize black activities, we're going to stay in this kind of like hamster wheel of constantly going between blue and red. So there's two ways out of this. One is that you consciously protect time for black activities, for strategy. Have you done your content and marketing strategy for 2026? Have you done your personal development plan for the areas that you want to grow for 2026? Have you done your business strategy for 2026? These are black activities. This is a great time of year to do it if you haven't done it already. November is actually the best time to do it so you gain momentum before even going into the next year. The second thing that you can do is you can hire strengths where you're weak, right? So Grace is my right-hand person. She's like my chief of staff. She takes away a lot of the red activities for me. So it allows me to play in my strengths and play in the areas where I believe that I should be playing in black and blue. She also supports me on a lot of that black activity as well. Because if you notice over the last 2 or 3 months, I don't know if you've noticed, but if you follow me on LinkedIn, if you follow me on Instagram, the content has gone up in quality, it's gone up in consistency, it's gone up in grace activity. But that's because I'm working with Grace, right? So that's my way of balancing off that weakness, right? It's not that I can't create, but I need that consistency. So I need to work with someone so I'm not working alone. So that system's called red, blue, black. Okay, Grace has given me all the emojis, but she knows this already. I tell her this every day. This ain't a surprise. She knows she's awesome. Okay, but that's red, blue, black. It's a very important system if you run a business or if you're freelancing, consulting, entrepreneuring. Okay, now let's get on to goals. Okay, and I'm going to be a little bit controversial here because I'm going to share an unpopular opinion. When we talk about goals, everyone talks about this acronym of SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And sometimes we say it almost without thinking. And sometimes the problem is we're saying it without even thinking what that represents. Just out of interest, I'm going to launch a poll. How many people set SMART goals here? And you're not going to get told off. Excellent. I love that courage there. Straight away, straight in. Fantastic. That's interesting to see. So the majority of people actually don't set SMART goals. That's really interesting to see. I wasn't aware of that. I thought it'd be a lot more. That's really interesting to see. I'm going to dive into that in a second. All right, here's the results. The majority of people actually don't set SMART goals. So actually it's a minority that set SMART goals. Just out of curiosity, and feel free to unmute yourself. Those that don't set SMART goals, how do you set goals for yourself? Do you set goals for yourself? I'm really curious. How do you goal set?
I can go if you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for me, obviously, if they're more business related, I'll try to make them more measurable. But I would say if we're talking more long-term, aspirational, I'll be honest, as delusional as possible. And then when I think of what do I need to get there, that's when I'll think like, what do I have capacity? Like, I'm not going to go today from coaching 20 people to coaching 2,000 in a year. but I do know my long-term vision is maybe 2,000 or 20,000. So I would say long term, I don't really go by the measurement is when I try to plan and like think of the actions I could take. Maybe that becomes a bit more measurable, but I try not to limit myself.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you. Who else has their own unique system for how they set goals? Sarah, is your hand up there?
I don't know if it's unique, but something I did differently in 2021. I definitely have been one of those people who used to do New Year's resolutions and realized it didn't work. And so I actually decided to experiment with just trying to set some habits. And so don't laugh. One of the first ones I did was, okay, I'm going to brush my teeth in the morning as well as at night. And just decided on a few little things I was going to try and build into my day and build into my week as things I did. And I've actually found that's been much more helpful to me in terms of getting out and exercising regularly, just trying to make it habit and automatic rather than a decision I need to make.
And
I don't
Sarah,
think it's
just out of
unique, but it
interest,
helped.
Sarah, what is the auto trigger for you? Is it waking up? Is it going walking past your bathroom? What was the trigger initially to
Yeah.
help you get into the habit, which is often what people struggle with, getting into making a habit?
So it's now my what do I do before I sit down at my desk?
Great.
So it's really, really difficult, candidly. Like if I work a lot with Australia, so if I have a 7 a.m. call, which happens quite a bit through the winter, I have to be really intentional about blocking out a mid-morning break so that I can go do that. But I need that for other reasons, so it's good to have. But yeah, it's the triggers part. I've tried to do more of that because it's actually really helpful to have like, okay, when I do this, I'm going to do that as well. But yeah, my morning routine for get myself ready to sit down and work is hopefully breakfast. Usually it happens, but then take my pills, go brush my teeth, and then sit down and get started. And that's been really helpful, actually. Yeah,
Thank
no
you,
problem.
Sarah. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Anthony.
Yeah, mine is kind of I think twofold. I do have some smart-ish goals because like I got bills to pay. I need to know how much money I need to make kind of thing. But one experiment I'm currently in is at the beginning of April this year, I decided that my new year starts on April 1st. So because all this is made up anyway, so I was like, my new year is on April 1st. And I think about the life I want to live. So like I want to have quality time with my dad. Like quality time, there really isn't a metric on that. It's like it's being present, right? So backing into what do I need to how do I basically my goals my I set my life around how I want to feel, what do I want to experience, and those kind of things, and let everything kind of fall into that.
I like there's some language that you use there that I just want to double click on for a second, Anthony. You said experiment. Can you explain to me why you framed it as an experiment?
I think experiment partly because back to my science days, but I think experiment for me takes away the pressure of it working out 100% perfect. Um, and then it allows me the freedom to kind of fool around with things. And try to make it fun too, because I mean, it's got to be fun, or otherwise, like I just won't do it.
Yeah, I love that. One of the reasons why I love tracking in Notion is because it allows me to experiment and just understand like whether I'm taking a step in the right direction or not, because I'm constantly reviewing what I'm learning and extracting from this experience. So that regardless if I achieve the goal or I don't, my worst case scenario is that I extract learnings. So that's why I really like that language that you use of experiments to lighten the load and the pressure of feeling the permanence of a big goal that feels unattainable because we haven't managed to cut it into smaller, more digestible chunks. It's like how do you eat an elephant? It's like one bite at a time, right? So that's what we're trying to do here when we're having this discussion around goals, and it's really interesting and insightful hearing the different methods that people use. Samson, you beat me to the mark, so I'm going to go in that direction, but you shared something in the comments. Can you share it again, unmute yourself and share some context there, please?
I don't know how long ago it was, but it's been a while now. I remember you sharing in your newsletter the PACT framework. So I had to literally search it up again because I forgot what the acronym meant. And
Yeah.
essentially it's purposeful, actionable, continuous, and trackable. So
Excellent.
as I've been part of the angel investing community before, that's why I adopted your Notion tracker. So then I'll do things like track my workouts and then post a picture of like the end result of the cardio machine of what I've done, and then I'll put that into the tracker. So that's my trackable
Great.
part. Continuous is like basically forming the habit for me. Actionable is actually doing the thing. And then when it comes to
Great.
purposeful, I feel that it's more about my health and making sure that I'm able to regulate my emotions after
Fantastic.
working out. So that's how I approach it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So Samson's stolen my thunder, but I think it's powerful when you hear it from someone else, to be honest. But that's exactly where I was going with this. I was coming to share with you that actually packed goals are more effective than smart goals for me personally, right? For anyone that didn't catch it when he shared it, the acronym for packed stands for purposeful, like a meaningful, personal, long-term aspirational goal. Actionable, small actions that you can take daily or weekly that are within your control. That's an important part there, within your control. Continuous, the journey of continuous improvement becomes the focus rather than just attaining the goal. You know, when you hear the saying like trust the process, like this is what we're talking about, is falling in love with the process and the journey, not just the end, right? It's really important. Okay. Trackable, have you done it or not? And how did it make you feel? You see how we're focusing so much on feelings? The reason is because how you feel impacts how you perform. If I feel at work like I'm not valued, I'm not appreciated, I'm not supported, I might do the bare minimum at work. If I feel like I am valued, like I am seen, like my managers in my corner and they appreciate me and they support me and they really encourage me and empower me, it's going to improve my performance. The same is true when I'm hosting this webinar. If I'm feeling nervous, then I might be shaking. I might struggle to get my words out. I might be saying a lot. I might struggle to get through this content. I might struggle to take you with me. I might lose a lot of people. If I'm feeling confident, I can control my pace, my tonality, my words, my pausing, my humor, because I'm feeling confident. What you notice there is the difference isn't my ability. I have the same ability in both situations. All that's different is how I feel. So how you feel impacts how you perform, which is why tracking not only whether you've done the thing or not, but how you feel is actually really important. You know, it's really important to track how you feel. So a good example here is a SMART goal is getting 1,000 subscribers in 30 weeks. The first thing that should come to your mind is, how am I going to do that? How? Why 1,000? Why that number? How did I pick that? A packed goal is I'm going to commit to consistency. So I'm going to publish 3 blogs a week over the next 30 weeks. Okay. Just out of interest, there's a few people here I recognize from my newsletter. How many years do you think I've been writing my newsletter for? Those that subscribe, there's a few subscribers here. How many years have you read the newsletter? Okay, Samson's definitely read it for at least 2 years. Same as Sarah, because he mentioned a newsletter from last year, the Packed Goals. Yeah, Anthony 6, great. 3, 4, great. I've published my newsletter for 11 years. Now, if my goal was to get to 10,000 subscribers, I would have quit already because I'm not there yet, and that's not what I'm trying to achieve. But because I focused on consistency and posting at least once every 2 weeks, I've managed to publish a newsletter for 11 years. Now, on the surface, if the metric is 10,000, then I failed. But if the metric is consistency, I can share with you, even through my tracker, how much benefit and value I've got from honoring that process over time. In fact, next year, I'm starting to write a book, and my primary source of insight is my tracker and my newsletter. So I look back and I'm so grateful that I have this library of Andy to look through in order to now pull it together as a book. You know, so that's a great example of a packed goal, like in practice. Okay. I'm going to round up so that we can have conversation and dialogue now around what I've gone through. And I did promise that I'm going to share my template. So I am going to share that with you as well. Okay. So in summary, I want you all to just take away that it's important to start with a system and not necessarily a goal. So set up your systems, whether it's in Notion, whether it's in Google Sheets, whether you have your own quirky way. I want you to create a system where you can start tracking your curiosity, start tracking your goals, start tracking what you're doing, start tracking your packed goals. Okay. I encourage you to experiment with setting packed instead of smart goals. It sounds like a lot of you don't set smart goals anyway, actually, but I encourage you to start experimenting with packed goals. And I'm happy to email everyone a copy of the slides, so don't worry about making sure that you got everything. I'm happy to share this afterwards. Okay. And remember that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. I mentioned my newsletter. For anyone that isn't subscribed, that is curious, if you scan here, you can subscribe to my newsletter. I don't charge for my newsletter. I just share insights along my journey of trying to live an intentional life to inspire others to do the same. Okay. I've got people that subscribe to my newsletter on the call so they can attest that I'm not a snake oil salesman. I'm just writing from the heart and the head every time. Okay. So now I want to get into reflections and conversations, all right, into dialogue. All right. We've just gone through setting up your 2026 blueprint. Okay. Oh, wait. I've got some ideas in the chat. Andy, you should call your book the Library of Andy. Thank you, Sarah. I should note that down because, getting titles is quite tricky. So I take all of the ideas as they come. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you as well, Catherine, on the newsletter. I appreciate that. I'm happy it gives you food for thought. Okay. So I want us to talk more holistically around how you're feeling around like setting up your system for 2026. And I want to open it up for discussion, so feel free to unmute yourself. Good to see you, Tom. I don't know if you missed the beginning, but good to see you. I know it's hard with a full-time job and not, so I appreciate seeing you. All right. Thank you, Anthony. That's very kind of you. Very kind of you. Thank you. Barbara, I know you subscribe as well, so thank you too. Samson, was that you?
Yeah, I've got a quick I don't know, like thought I want to put out there. I
Yeah.
wonder if the prompts for reviewing and having that feedback loop of your tracker would be the seasons of weather, like when it changes, rather than it being a midpoint in the
Quarterly.
year or the end of the year.
Nice. It's more
Yeah.
digestible, so that's a great suggestion. Yeah. Yeah. And this is what I like because you've got to make it your own. Like for me, I do it every 6 months, but it does take me a whole day, sometimes a day and a bit to get through it because it's so rich. But actually, if you make it into smaller, more digestible chunks, doing it every quarter, for some people doing it every month, I think it's a great idea. But even if I did it monthly, I would still do it every 6 months so I can connect the dots across the
Okay.
months. And I think there's value to doing that. So when I do my 12-month review, which is what I've just completed, which took me about 2 days, I found all these wonderful connections and lessons from looking across the interconnected months rather than just a point in time. Great. I don't know who was first there actually. Was it Alucci? You're on. I think you're on mute. Did I? Oh no, can't hear you. Maybe take off the headphones and try without the headphones. I don't know if you're in the environment, but that's all right. I can't. Oh,
Can you hear me now?
yeah.
Okay, I think Barbara put her hand first. So I will
But don't
take
worry, Oluchi, please go ahead. After all that hassle to get the sound working, let's not lose it.
Okay, I think I've
Thanks,
had
Barbara.
problems with the sound, but Andy, first I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing what's been working for you. I think my key takeaway and how I'm feeling about it is finally I'm going to do something that works. Because yes, I do would normally would set the SMART goals, but then I find that I don't go back to them. And it's
Yeah.
almost like I feel this fear of disappointment that, oh my gosh, I haven't hit this goal by XYZ timeline. And it's almost like it removes that purposeness out of what I'm meant to be achieving. And it's more like an enemy rather than a, hey, this is your life. You should enjoy
Mm,
achieving this goal. So yeah, I'm leaving here feeling equipped, feeling excited. I even got an idea to use AI because as you know, I'm transitioning into
mm,
product management to create a goal setting tracker for me that reminds me to actually go back and check my goals and not
great,
just like go la 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 and then it's the end of the year and I'm like crap I haven't achieved this and just more
great.
intentionality, so thank you so much.
That's fantastic. So Alucci touched on a great point because every 2 weeks I set a meeting with myself. Yeah, I'm a bit of a nerd. I time block and set a meeting with myself, often with Grace actually, called my sprint planning. every Monday. And I learned it when I used to work in tech as a product manager. So during that time, I look into the next 2 or 3 weeks and I look at like how I want to spend my time. And then I look into my tracker and understand like what I need to prioritize and do. Then at the end of that 2 weeks period, I review how I spent my time and I ask myself what's worked well, what's not worked so well, and what would I do differently? And I do that every 2 weeks. The compound impact of the learning from doing that activity means that it's an auto trigger to make sure that I'm tracking. So setting those reminders in your calendar, I've even got a reminder from Monday to Friday at 5 o'clock called journal. I don't journal at 5 o'clock on any day, but seeing that in my calendar always makes sure that I make sure I journal along the way. I'm in the habit now where I don't even need to do it daily. I just do it impulsively, but it helped me set up that habit. So sometimes a calendar is such a powerful tool because we all look at it daily to remind ourselves and to set up a habit. And then once we've set up the habit, we can take the training wheels off. So that's how the calendar works for me and setting up meetings with myself. So I really encourage you, if you don't do it already, to start setting up meetings with yourself. Stop prioritizing everyone else and having meetings with them if you're not willing to prioritize and have meetings with yourself. Okay? It's really important. Barbara, did you still have your question?
I do. And I will ask one at a time to allow others the chance, but I have about 3 questions.
Sure.
Thanks again. It's been really, really useful. And impactful as always, Andy. I think the first one for me is, hearing it's important that you have a system in place. I would like to know, how did you go about identifying the right tools? Because for me, I don't know if everyone else here is techie, but identifying the right tools, whether that's your use of Notion or whatever
Yeah.
else is out there, can be overwhelming. Yes, there's a lot of talk about AI. So yeah, the first part is, how did you go about identify the right tools? The second part is, I know you're a family man.
Can we start with the first one so I don't
Okay,
forget it?
yeah,
Because I'm really
sure.
simple-minded.
No,
Thank you. So I'm a big fan of feeding your curiosity. And curiosity is what led me. Do you remember that slide where I had my physical journal and then Google Docs and then Notion? The only thing I can point that to is curiosity. Like I'm really curious about figuring out how to make this work for me. Fortunately, AI wasn't as advanced, so it wasn't really an option for me. So it forced me to play around with things. And if I look at them like experiments, that physical journal was 3 months while I was in South America backpacking. That Google Doc was 12 months that I tried that out and then figured out that it was really hard to do my end of year reviews and mid-year reviews because like it was just a stream of consciousness. It's like reading a book. And then I went to Notion when I realized that Notion is like a database. And actually what I need is a database as a journal. And that allows me to categorize, all right, I want to filter on everything related to work and business. Or I want to filter to everything related to one of my subcategories like testimonials so that I can look at all of the things people have given me feedback on to make sure am I in alignment with what I believe is my purpose and how I'm meant to be in service to the world. I'll give you an example. I did a workshop with Anna, who's on the call today. And after the workshop, Anna shared some lovely feedback with me. And I shared her feedback in my Notion. And I went back and listened to the Notion. I almost messaged Anna to just say, do you know what? Thank you so much for that lovely message 3 months ago, because it was so encouraging. And listening back, it just encourages me to keep doing what I'm doing. I didn't send that message, but I'm saying thank you now. But that's what the Notion allows me to do. And that's why I love the Notion and I've settled on Notion as my system. The reason I created a Google Docs version, a Google Sheets version, is because I recognize that Google Sheets can work in the same way. It is also a database as well. So in Google Sheets, you can actually like do the same thing anyway. So that's the reason that I set up a Google Sheets version of my tracker. Does that make sense? So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to copy into the chat because I recognize I haven't done it already. And in the chat, I'm going to copy the article on packed goals, not smart goals. I'm going to copy the tracker template in Notion. And I'm also going to copy the tracker template in Google Sheets. Okay, so feel free to just click all three so that you have it open on your tabs and it's outside of the chat so that when we end the call today, you have access to all three. But in short, Barbara, just experiment and figure out what works best for you. The family man was the second question, Barbara.
The family man is the second question, and I'm gonna tie it up with my third one, which is about being full-time employed as someone with full-time employment and other things to do on the side. On well, I think you work for yourself at the moment, Andy. I'm not caught up
Yeah,
with you one-on-one for ages, but
no, you're correct.
when you look back, do you think how would you have managed doing it as a family man and, as someone who's working full time but with ideas or things to pursue on the side? If you did some of it then, what would you do differently now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I have this conversation often with my 8-year-old Aria that in life sometimes the choice isn't between easy and hard, but actually the choice is between hard and hard. So pick your hard. So even though I'm working for myself, I've picked my hard. There's different challenges along the way of working for myself as to when I was employed and working within a company. So when I was working within a company, I had to be really upfront and conscious of like protecting my time and making sure that I have enough time or more as much time as possible at work to actually work and not just be in meetings. And that's really countercultural, which is why it's quite difficult because the corporate workplace is used to having a lot of meetings, which means that a lot of your work gets done in your evenings. The problems was in the evenings, sometimes I did want to do the school pickups. I did want to go to the activities. I did want to be a present father. So as a consequence, I'd end up doing that and sometimes sleeping late and saying to myself, this isn't working for me. The other thing that happened around that time for me was that I started discovering my strengths. I remember what I mentioned earlier when I asked my friends and my family members, and they were like, Andy, you're a great public speaker. I started figuring out that what I love doing is facilitating development through dialogue. And I realized that I'm actually uniquely placed to do it because I'm actually really good at doing what I do. So I started stepping into how can I make this my job? And my challenge at the time was there was no job role that neatly allowed Andy to be 100% his most authentic self. I could do this role as head of products, but I'm probably getting 60% of me. I could do this other role as head of L&D, and I'm probably like 70% of myself. But actually, I had to step out and be a bit courageous and say to myself, I need to create this role because I truly believe that I'm gifted at what I do. I just need the opportunity to show what I can do. And then I had to separate in my mind, like many entrepreneurs do, what am I good at, which is the facilitating dialogue and development versus sales, that I need to work on sales and business development. When we conflate the two, we start saying to ourselves, oh, maybe I shouldn't have left my job. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I shouldn't be an entrepreneur. But what we don't realize is that we need to separate the two. I could be gifted at this skill. I just need to get better at sales and business development. So that's what I worked on. I give you a really simple example of that. I have a great network. I've not done a good job at saying to my network, this is what I do. And the next time that you're having a team day or an away day, I would love for you to consider me for consideration. I know Selena very well on this call. I don't really even ask her that. But I should be doing that because they're my friends and that's an easy ask. And I know I'll deliver once I'm given the opportunity, but I just need to get better at sales. So that's how it worked out for me, Barbara. And I'll just end on this point on that question because it's such a good question. And I know we're getting to time, but I did ask myself if I was on my deathbed, what would I want more of? And I wouldn't want another day in work. I wouldn't want any of my investments. I wouldn't want my smartphone or my laptop. I want more time with my loved ones. So why should I wait till I'm on my deathbed when I can optimize for that life now? And that's what set me on the course of living an intentional life and inspiring others to be more intentional with their time too.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for setting up that question. Anka, I think we'll take your question and then we'll round up, come to a graceful close.
Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to ask you really quickly. I think what resonated with me and what I really liked is that you have a whole structure, but that structure is very much grounded in the feeling. So everything, all the goals start with the purpose, and all this is just a structure, kind of continually check in with yourself, with how are you committing to what you're doing? Does it still feel good? Is it still aligned? So I really liked that focus on the feeling. The one thing that kind of really stood out to me is that you do have those conversations with your higher self. And for us, in order to pursue these packed goals, there's also a lot of like embodiment kind of work that needs to happen because there is a
Absolutely.
gap between yourself at this stage and the person who will be maybe living in that reality. So how does that look like for you?
Yeah,
The help of the structure that you have and that you have in place.
great. So what I'm going to do, because you've asked that question, is I'm going to go into my tracker on my phone and I'm going to filter on higher self, and I'm going to look at the type of entries that are under higher self. Okay. And I'm just gonna just share some random ones with you because I think it will be helpful given that you've asked the question. Anyone that has to leave, I just want to say a big thank you for attending. I appreciate you being so present and engaging, and I will share the slides afterwards. Reach out to me if you don't receive it or if you have any specific questions that I didn't manage to address. Anyone that can stay on, no problem. But I just want to be respectful of everyone's time this evening. So thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, excellent. All right, so I'll give you an example. I captured something on the 21st of November that says, a time is coming and is now. The reason I captured that is because I was reading the Bible at the time, and I was reading in John where Jesus is saying, most assuredly I say to you, the hour is coming and is now when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God. And he's basically saying, I know that I'm going to die, so that hour is coming, but I'm also here now. And it reminded me of what I shared with the oak tree. Even though it's a seed today, that seed is still an oak tree. And in 20 years, when it is actually the actual tree manifested, it's always been that tree. But it's the same with us. Like, as we succeed and achieve and become more and more, actually, we've always been that person. We were just becoming, and we were on that journey of becoming. And sometimes the world has to catch up. The markets have to catch up. The work environment has to catch up with who we're becoming. But we have to be our first champions and know that and believe that we are going to become. And the funny thing with belief is that sometimes you've got to borrow belief before you have self-belief. So having people like mentors and coaches and a support network is really helpful to borrow that belief until I have self-belief. Then once I have that self-belief, I can visualize the life that I'm going to have. I can say affirmations to remind myself about that life. And I can listen to certain music or podcasts or motivation to just keep me in that rhythm of I'm becoming and I am. I'm becoming and I am. And that's how it works for me. So I can look for a number of entries across higher self. Some of those entries are actually feedback loops. I've got one that says I'm gifted and blessed. And there's a friend of mine that sent a message. Actually, one of them is Samson sent me a lovely message. Samson, do you remember the message you sent me on WhatsApp? I'm not going to read it out, but do you remember what you sent me?
I don't read it out, but I remember. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Samson was just blessing me with some beautiful words. I think he attended my event, actually, like the one that you were at, Anchor, around limiting beliefs. And afterwards, he sent me some lovely words. He said, "You're a gifted and blessed soul. I'm glad I listened to my colleague in 2018 and attended this event where I met you." And I needed that, and I want to remember that. And I'm like, Samson is speaking to who I'm becoming. I am a gifted and blessed soul. I am blessing people with my message and what I'm putting out into the world. And those reminders are feedback loops that I'm staying on course. I just need to stay on track. Was that helpful?
Yeah, thank you. That's really great.
Awesome. I have a feeling there's a few more curious questions, but I want to bring it to a lovely close because I want to respect your time and I want to honor the fact that we spent over an hour together. But thank you for attending. Thank you for supporting me along my journey. A lot of you have supported me in many and different ways, and it's good to see old friends and you on this call as well. And I'm happy to answer any specific questions if you DM me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or send me an email. All right. But here's to a more intentional 2026. Awesome. Thank you all.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.